Hi everyone, and welcome to a new GreenTalk. Today we're glad to be joined by Charlotte and Myrthe from Fair Tourism Foundation. Charlotte and Myrthe, welcome. Welcome to this new GreenTalk. And yeah, we're very happy to have you today. To begin with, would you like to introduce yourself and to tell us a bit more about your organization?
Yeah, so I'll start. Great. Thank you so much for having us on the Green Talk. We're really honored. I'm working for Fair Tourism. It's been set up in 1989. And during my studies at NHTV, I worked as a volunteer for the foundation. And in 2004, when I was a lecturer at Saxion University, the board wanted to stop with the foundation. So I decided, no, I want to continue this foundation, and I did. So I changed the name. It was Reisbewijs before, and now it's Fair Tour. I changed it into Fair Tourism, a little bit more international. And I also added one of the goals, because the goal that was already there is really exciting people about sustainable tourism, creating informing them about sustainable tourism. And then I wanted to add one very and to my idea, important thing to work on is that to support local communities with the development of CBT, with community-based tourism. So that's what we did. And our mission is really to assist communities that feel exploited by tourism, as we've been doing with Karenni people in Hoi Phuket in Thailand, to make that transition towards community-based tourism. And because together with the local people, we can assess the situation and give the tourism back to them, so that it's empowering instead of exploiting them. And and we want to assist other communities as well to do that. And for example, with a neighboring village of Hoi Phuket, it's Hoi Sutao, that also wants to make this transition towards, because with the Kayan, it's really that everybody knows their stories. Everybody knows the people, and everybody knows the rings, the beautiful rings around their neck.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They're so famous. But nobody knows their stories. So in 2012, I decided that should change. And I went to Thailand and talked with the people and really see what they felt like it. And really with Fair Tourism, it's our mission to tell their stories and to excite people to go to visit Mae Hong Son. Because Mae Hong Son is a region that most people have not heard of, and it's one of the most it is the most mountainous region in Thailand, with nearly 90% pristine nature in this province, and explore this magical place. And so that's for me now.
Okay. Myrthe, do you want to add something to this?
Just to introduce myself, I guess. Also, really thank you for this opportunity. It's super nice to be here. My name is Myrthe, and I'm a final year at Leiden University College, and I'm studying Human Diversity, Culture, History, Society. So not really the tourism sector, slightly different. But I ended up working at Fair Tourism because of one of my courses. It was called Development Project Management. And the thing was that you would work together with a real-life client, which for me was Fair Tourism. And the goal of our project was sort of to promote that village of Wapukeng that Charlotte talked about. Mm-hmm. I just really enjoyed this collaboration with them. So in the end, I started working here, which has been about a year ago now, and I'm still here. So yeah.
Okay. And you're still studying right now?
A year.
Last year, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Of my bachelor, yeah.
Okay, great. Can you maybe explain a bit more to our audience what fair tourism is exactly about? What fair tourism exactly means to you?
So the fair tourism the fair tourism kind of means this kind of tourism that is fair to both the environment but also to the people. So it's really about these 3 P's, which is people, planet, profit. And nowadays, I mean, you have many different terms like this. You have regenerative tourism, experiential tourism, transformational tourism, and even nanotourism. Like you have a lot of these. But what they all come down to is these 2 things, which is to be sustainable and also community-based. So yeah, for fair tourism, the term really just refers to a kind of tourism that kind of tries to maximize the positive impacts on the environment and the people, and sort of minimize like the negative impacts, as much as possible.
Okay, and how do you try to address the intersect between social and environmental justice within fair tourism, the organization? Then I mean, like, is it ever complicated, conflicting?
So yes, they can be conflicting. For example, with national parks in countries like Kenya. I'm born in Kenya, so it has a very special feeling to me, and I would like to work there also in the future. But for example, in Kenya, you have like indigenous people that, like Maasai, that they cannot herd their cattle anymore in the national parks. And many times local people also had to resettle because of tourism development. And they were really resettled in the name of conservation. But local people really need to be involved in nature and wildlife protection. Otherwise, it's not sustainable. And they have lived in nature. Like Maasai and other tribes in other countries as well. They lived in nature with wildlife for decades. And now people are deciding that for the sake of safeguarding wildlife, the locals are the enemy. And this is really a detrimental way of thinking that does more harm to nature and wildlife than good. And in the case of Huay Pukeng, the locals live in very good harmony with nature. In Thailand, the Department of National Parks, Wildlife and Plant Conservation, really the government, they are very strict with nature protection. Like with the Karenni people, they have some agriculture near to the village, and that has also been proven very important during this pandemic times, that people cannot travel. And when tourists can come visit again, they have a very beautiful tradition to plant trees on Mother's Day. And they can also, if tourists want to do that on another day, that's also possible to plant trees with the local community as one of the community-based tourism activities.
Okay, great. Are they different sorts of sustainable tourism than community-based tourism? And do your organization uses them? Does your organization uses them?
So there's definitely a lot of different sorts of sustainable tourism next to CBT. And that's because kind of every kind of tourism can be sustainable. Because it might seem hard to believe, but even mass tourism could be sustainable in the future, which is kind of also what Charlotte and I really hope that will happen. Because there's many different ways to create a sustainable form of tourism, because it's all about having this place where the environment, where the biodiversity of that environment is conserved and also protected, but also where the local people and local culture is respected and also preserved. But at the same time, because it's still tourism and it's still a market, economic market, you also have to have some kind of socioeconomic benefits for the local population. So it's hard, but there's definitely some examples out there. So for instance, you could think of like a resort that is run by the local people, so they earn the money, but at the same time, it could be run completely on solar power. So it's also good for the environment. Or you could think of like an organized hiking trip in which the guides are certified, so they know what they're doing. And the hiking trip could be predetermined so that the people don't just wander off into nature and negatively affect the nature, but also follow this trail which everybody follows. And the same thing with that could be that you inform the tourists beforehand of how to be more sustainable. So for instance, you could tell them to not throw away trash in nature while hiking, which seems a bit strange, but it's still a very common thing because there's no trash bin, so they just throw it out.
Yeah.
Or you could tell them to respect the norms and values of the local people, which they might encounter while hiking. But yeah, for the Fair Tourism Foundation in particular, we're just really focused on community-based tourism for now. Yeah.
Okay, so if we dwell a bit on your work with the communities and like your work abroad, you have made clear that community-based tourism involves the local people in the process of how tourism activities are carried out in their communities, and that their involvement is part of what makes CBT sustainable. Can you tell us about this process of involving locals in the decision-making process around CBT activities and implementation, and how this contributes to your vision of sustainable tourism?
Yeah. So CBT is really for and by locals. It's that is really the definition also for that. And as a fair tourism, we're only assisting them, but it's their project, it's their village, and it's their lives. Yeah, we're really happy that UvA Green made this transition towards CBT. But before I continue, I also want to explain a little bit more about the history about the Karenni people.
Yeah.
So the Karenni people, they are originally from Myanmar, and they have all different subgroups, like Kayan, which is with the rings around their neck. You have the Kayal, you have Red Karen and Pakayor, and all these subgroups, they live in UvA Green. And in the 80s and 90s, they escaped Myanmar, really, because they had to, their houses were burned down and they had to escape the civil war, the military junta. And in the refugee camps in Thailand, and they were given 3 options by the government: resettle to other countries like Finland, Australia, and also Holland, but stay in a refugee camp with no freedom of movement, or move to villages open to tourism. And UvA Green is one of those 3 original villages near the border with Myanmar in Mae Hong Son province, together with the village of Huay Sutao and Nai Soi. And because so this really triggered tourism to visit these beautiful people and see their, how can they wear these rings and what does it mean for their neck, and we can also explain that it is deformative for the body, so it's very heavy but it doesn't really elongate the neck, but it presses down the collarbone. So people are saying they cannot take them off, then their neck will, it's not true. They can take them off, and they can also live a beautiful life without them. But it's a way of their culture. There are also tour guides in Thailand telling lies that they're wearing them to prevent from tiger bites. And that's also not true. It's really because of this is their way of identifying themselves. Like every indigenous people have their way of, presenting their tribe and their culture. And they're so proud of it. But so many tourists came there. So then in the end of the 2000s, around 2008, many businessmen opened these kind of commercial show villages near tourism hubs like Chiang Mai, Pattaya, Chiang Rai, Phuket, that tourists didn't have to go all the way to Mae Hong Son. But this has been a big problem for the villages in Mae Hong Son, that they were not coming out to Mae Hong Son anymore. And the thing is with these commercial villages near these tourism hubs, that the tourists, they pay an entrance fee. They go and watch the famous Kayan. They make some pictures, and if they're lucky, they buy some souvenirs. But the reviews about this are not lying. It's most tourists are not happy about the experience, saying they feel like a voyeurist, even saying that it's like a human zoo, not learning anything. It's only a marketplace. And they were literally saying, don't go there. But that's not the answer. So it will take away their income if you don't go there. So there's an alternative, and Hua Pukeng is showing that by really talking with the people and what they want to develop, and how they want to talk, how they want to do the tourism in their village, that they're now the first and only Karenni village in the whole of Thailand that made the transition from being a show village towards CBT.
Okay.
Yeah. And neighboring village, which you can, with a beautiful hike, you can go to Hua Su Tao, and they also are interested to make this transition, and not as competing with Hua Pukeng, but really as a collaborating, so that tourists visit both Hua Pukeng and Hua Su Tao. And all the activities that Hua Pukeng offers to tourists, like wood carving, weaving, like the scarf that I'm wearing today is made by Kayan women, making things from bamboo, making bracelet or ring. Yeah, I have to show it. So it's really beautiful. How do you see, like this? Yeah, this kind of bracelet. You can also make this like from the rings, and bigger like this. And also there are so many different ways of making a bracelet, so you can do that. And these are really activities that the Kayan people have, the Karenni people have decided this is what we want to do with the village, to make that with them, and because it are like ancient crafts of passed on from generation to generation. And we have established partnership with DMCs, like in Thailand, for example, the tour companies that work together with tour operators in countries like the Netherlands, like in Shoestring, Better Places, Footprint Travel, Fox, Savadi, Dutch tour operators. They are offering these CBT activities now. And from their clients' feedback, we hear that their visit to Hua Pukeng is one of the highlights of their trip. So that's so fantastic that they can enjoy these local activities, and it improves the experience for both the hosts and the guests by 100%. So.
Okay, it's good you talk about, you were previously talking about disinformation, because I myself also heard one of those information you said about like their neck falling and then they can't, keep their neck up and stuff like that.
Yeah.
About how you implement community-based tourism with the communities. I was wondering, how do you inform them about CBT and sustainable tourism, and how do you build the collaboration? That is, how does the status from service proposition to collaboration take place? And also, have there been conflicts? Were they always willing to collaborate, or
Yes, so there have never been conflicts. Hua Pukeng is a community of more than 200 people, but they're a very close-knit community. They have lived so many years together in this village, and there's also absolutely no violence. It's very beautiful how they live together. One fantastic example, I think, is that when I was there in 2019 November to give them CBT training, I wanted to arrange a cleanup with the village, and I told them one of the nights of the training, shall we do a cleanup? And everybody was enthusiastic. So the next day, like nearly half of the community was there, and within 1 hour we cleaned up all the community, children, elder, everybody together. It was fantastic. So this is also a very nice example what you can do with tourists, but also what we can also learn from them, so a beautiful, more collectivist culture. So that a little bit more about the how it started. So in 2012, I did a traineeship, and we decided to visit Hua Pukeng and also Hua Su Tao and a more show village in Chiang Mai, and we talked with the community, and also we made like pictures to show really what was happening with this tourism. How did the tourism relate to the locals, and how were they? So we held a photo exhibition when we came back in Holland, multiple locations in the Netherlands. If you are interested, you can see all the pictures on our website, fairtourism.nl, and then you can see the stories as well. And in that time, I talked also with we talked with the village chief in Huaypukeng, talking about CBT and explaining what CBT means. And he was very interested already then, like, yes, I want to develop this. And then yeah, we had to go back to, of course, I went back to the Netherlands, and I was like, okay, how are we going to do this from a distance? And I was still in contact with organizations in Thailand. And so they, the organization in Thailand, they assisted the village really to start with the CBT activities in 2016. And then we followed with that also with my training in 2019, adding more activities they wanted to do. As Fair Tourism doing a lot of the marketing as well for them. And to go from this service proposition to collaboration, so that can take a few years. That shows this example as also. And I also want to stress the importance that we sometimes have to take off our Western glasses and, you know, realize that things work differently in another country, and that it maybe takes a little bit longer. So now I have I really want to go to Thailand this, March, April, which is of course not going to happen now with the pandemic, but I wanted to go in this time because then they have the Kayan New Year, which is very beautiful, a celebration. So interesting with the stories and how they believe in auspicious, it's like an animist belief, how they celebrate the Kayan New Year. So they choose a holy tree and also a auspicious date. So only 1 month before that, you know exactly when the celebration is there, and they have a dancing celebration, and it's very interesting. And I would love to take Myrthe and other people that want to join as well, but we have to wait for now. So hopefully it will be next year. But now I have the idea to go there in November this year, if it allows, and we can take the vaccine before that, and travel restrictions are allowing that. And to also assisting them to give them more of the activities back to them, and that also the marketing they can do, because they have proved to me that they are so capable of running this tourism and CBT activities also without me and without our team. So I really want to I really want to do that, as we they really can do it. And it also helps us that we can then also start helping communities in Thailand and also beyond Thailand. We have some thesis students now researching possibilities in countries like Kenya, Tanzania, and Australia. So we definitely want to support other communities in Thailand that have this show element, and that maybe also want to transition, but also maybe other countries. And
Okay, that's great. Well, actually, the next question was a question from the audience, but also about COVID-19 and the situation. How has COVID travel bans and restrictions affected local communities? And how have you aided the communities to make a livelihood with the decrease in tourism? And are they aided in practicing other sustainable means of living during these times? And if so, what are they, and how do you go about it?
Okay. So kind of what we've noticed during the COVID time especially is that it's very important for communities such as Huaypukeng to not solely rely on tourism. It's like because the tourism industry, of course, kind of fluctuates, like when you have income and when you don't. So it's kind of important to have more of a diverse range of incomes to create a sort of resilience for when a crisis, such as the pandemic right now, for instance, when that occurs, that you kind of have a backup. So what we know from Wapokeng is that the inhabitants don't only live from the tourism industry, but they also earn money from agriculture. So right now they just, instead of going, trying to attract tourists and trying to survive the crisis, instead they just work more in the fields, and they try to sort of compensate that loss of income in that way.
And it does?
Yeah, sorry?
Yeah. It does? Does it compensate?
No, and of course not entirely, because they earn so much from the tourists. Yeah. But it is sort of like, at least for the time being, it's sort of a safety net. They don't solely rely on tourism, and they don't have no income right now. They have something at least. So we just know that whenever a crisis occurs, with these communities, they just really shouldn't rely on tourism alone, but they should have some other forms of income to just balance these things out in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Well, it's good that they still have something to hold on to, right? Loops from the audience wants to know if, all in all, the communities you promote really benefit from this tourism. Well, I think you kind of already answered that question, but maybe you want to add something to this.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, they really do, because that is a prerequisite for us when we work with them. We are in close contact with the local people and ask them how they want to develop tourism, what kind of activities do they want to offer, the cost for the activities. And even, from a distance, we can still have contact online. So that's very, very important and very good. And in Wapokeng, they told me that they're really happy to have more interactions with the tourists, that they are showing interest in their culture, and that they can tell their rituals and belief, and they can, the work they do with, that they can share that with tourists. And it's interesting because when you see a woman weaving a scarf, you think, oh, that's very easy. But then if you try it yourself, it's like, whoa, it's such a precise work and so hard to do. And you get such a respect for them to do that. And also with the other activities they offer. So I think that's, really important. And this whole experience changes everything, because tourists before were only gawking at them and making pictures. And it was a situation of them versus us. And it really divided them. The difference is very big between the tourists and the locals. And now it's a situation of we together. And when you talk with them, you realize that although their life is very different, we are all humans with human struggles. And we are all equal in our unique sense of way. And I think that CBT has that quality that's so amazing. Yeah.
Brings people together, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's good you mentioned tourists, because it was our next topic. So we know that fair tourism tries to raise awareness about respectful and sustainable tourism in the tourist countries. But how does that work exactly? For example, are you able to educate visiting tourists on the field when they're abroad? Or do you organize workshops prior to their journey to the country? And how does that work?
So Fair Tourism itself just gives workshops at educational institutions in the Netherlands. So it explains to students about sustainable tourism and also how to be a sustainable tourist yourself. And it kind of promotes sustainable tourism by also participating in like several projects, as this GreenTalk, for instance, or online webinars, podcasts, and also just through social media. And then the question on how to do it in the field. So for destinations such as Wapokeng, mostly the local villagers and especially the local tour guides are the ones who sort of have to take this up to make the tourists more aware of how to be respectful, for instance, while they're there. So for instance, with the hiking trails in the jungle surrounding the village, you're not allowed to hike there by yourself. Like you have to have one of the local tour guides, Aimwang or Peyu, with you. And they can also tell you then, for instance, about the medicinal plants and about the jungle itself, and all this like interesting information. But it's very important that, the most important thing is that the visitors, when they arrive, that they receive a sort of code of conduct of like what they should and shouldn't do while they're there. So for instance, you should take your shoes off before entering the house. What Charlotte already mentioned about taking photos, like you really have to ask permission first. To smoke in the designated areas only, to don't throw away trash randomly, like I said, just to treat the villagers with respect. Like, it's just a long list. But in that way, it kind of like foster these meaningful encounters, and you also just create a more enjoyable experience for both the tourists, for both yourself at that point, and also the locals. So yeah.
Okay. So you're able to both educate tourists before and on the field. That's great. Okay. And also, I listened to your podcast on the other tourism websites. It was really interesting.
Thank you.
Elena from Instagram wants to know if there is any research in tourism showing that consumers consider sustainable practices as an important requirement when choosing an accommodation. And what incentive does the tourism sector have in terms of implementing sustainable and environmentally conscious practices? You mentioned that when you said that tourists were not happy with the tours they were doing prior to fair tourism in Thailand, right? I think
What can you what do you mean?
Well, you said prior to fair tourism, collaborating with local communities, there were tourist tours proposed by other companies. And there were like the feedbacks were not good because they were like, this is human zoo, this is terrible. So that's what I was.
Yeah, and it's still happening in Thailand with many villages, like near what I said, near tourism hubs. There is still this happening. So we hope we can talk. We can see if it's not a very easy process, as you have to deal with so many parties, and we hope that it can change in a way, but it's always that the local people, if they want, that is the most important. So if the local people in this commercial village, they're okay with it, then we have to also respect that. So that's also important to, but it's, it's an interesting process we want to go into. So and Myrthe, great if you can the question about sustainable practice and features and the incentives for implementing sustainable and sustainable practices. Great if you can answer that question.
Yeah, so like if Charlotte said, if tourists, if the villagers want this kind of sustainable tourism, you also need, as the person is asking, like the incentive for tourists, like for the companies to actually want this, I guess. And it's definitely clear that more and more people want these kinds of sustainable features. But we also see that people rather not pay a lot more for it. So they want this, but for like, you need to find a sort of balance between these two, which is very difficult. But you can also sort of see the shift in the tourism industry itself, that shows that it's trying to become more and more sustainable, because like it seems that that's like a negative impact on your company or organization or the accommodation, like the hotels or something, if you don't try to become more sustainable now, because you can see this, that there's like a rise in the quality marks. There's especially more and more of these in the tourism industry right now. You have this thing called Travel Life, or the GSTC, which is the Global Sustainable Tourism Council. And they're giving away these quality marks. And if you don't have that in the future, it might make your accommodation or whatever you have like seem more like less sustainable and less likely for tourists to go there. So we see that more and more tour operators and accommodations also strive to sort of fulfill these sustainable criteria, so that they can get obtain such a quality mark and be certified, because that gives them, the credibility and stuff, and that also attracts people that are interested in that sustainability. So yeah, it's sort of a way to state that they're definitely sustainable. And it's definitely become more and more like increasingly important for consumers. And the question about the research, there's a lot of research out there. I looked it up for my course from before. And if you just look up anything related to keywords on sustainable tourism or anything, any synonyms, you'll definitely find a lot. Yeah.
Okay, great. On a broader note now, on the website, we can see that many students like you, Myrthe, are working on at Fair Tourism. Can you explain how the organization is well organized or ordered?
Yeah, so this year we have seen an exponentially big group of students. I've never seen that before. I think because internships are really scarce during this Corona crisis. But we have to say, we haven't seen students yet from the UvA to join us at Fair Tourism. So if you, in the future, you want to do your internship or thesis or voluntary work, you're very welcome to contact us. Yes, because we work in this way that we have students doing thesis, students doing internship. There are some universities like Hogeschool Zeeland, they do an internship and a thesis at the same time. So they have a lot of time to do different kinds of work. Like Myrthe, I'm so thankful that she wants to be a volunteer after her project, and I hope she will continue for very long. Yeah, I'm really happy with her, with all her work, and yeah, yeah, we have a lot of work on our hands. So with marketing, social media, funding, becoming a social enterprise, we are in the process. We were in the process in. Assisting Hoi Pukeng, assisting maybe other communities. So I'm really thankful and proud of my ever expanding team, and it really inspires me to work with all of them, and yeah, very thankful for all their endeavors and dedication. So yeah,
it's great to know that you're looking for students. I'm sure our audience will be very interested in that. Especially in Corona times, as you said, it's hard to find an internship.
Yeah.
Okay, Myrthe, now I have a question for you. What has working for Fair Tourism brought you?
Yeah, so it's just really a fun experience to work at Fair Tourism. Yeah, first of all that. And yeah, as I said, I'm still studying, so that's like a lot of theoretical knowledge, which is also very interesting, but it's just nice to also put it in practice. And yeah, to just see how things go in real life. And like I said, I'm also working in this very diverse team because there's people from all over the world. They're starting at all these different universities and doing very different studies. Like I'm not really studying tourism, but some of these people are. So they know a lot more than me, for instance, in some aspects. So yeah, you're just always learning from each other, which I find super interesting. And also if there's like a problem, because people have such different backgrounds, they also look at these problems from different perspectives and through different lenses. So it's just interesting to see that. And then, I mean, next to the team, I also just learn a lot about like promotion, marketing, communication, just sustainability, and also the tourism sector in general. And also just a really nice environment. There's just kind of enough space to be creative at Fair Tourism. So for instance, we have these weekly meetings where you get the tasks assigned to you. But there's also this very like an open atmosphere in the meeting. So if you have any new ideas or you want to bring something up or like a problem, you're more than welcome to share it. And Charlotte also really stimulates that. So that's great. So yeah, it's just very interesting. And also if there's like other seminars happening or events that are online right now, you'll also be informed about that because everybody sees these and like will let you know. So you can just develop yourself further, which I just really like. So I definitely recommend it to anybody. Yeah.
Sounds like a crazy interdisciplinary melting pot. Really.
Yeah, definitely.
Charlotte, how did you come about working in tourism area and in Fair Tourism especially?
Yeah, so I studied NHTV in Breda. Oh, sorry, it's called BUAS now. And I learned about sustainability very soon in my second year. And I went, that was also interesting because I went to Thailand and in the south, in Phuket, and I saw a beautiful place, Koh Thanoi. It's a very small place, but they built a hotel next to the, how do you say, the beach. So you couldn't see the beach anymore. I was like, how did this develop? And I was so looking around this place and I was like, this is, I want to be involved in this. I want to be involved in sustainable tourism. So that really got to me then already. And then in my fourth year, I did my thesis on the feasibility of community-based tourism in Kerala, India. With the self-help groups there, working on women, self-help groups working on microfinance, and they wanted to develop some CBT activities. So, and then it really started to, you know, create my passion really for CBT, and that I want to focus my career on this and, you know, bringing tourists and locals together because it can lead to mutual understanding and respect. And it's, yeah, often the highlight of a holiday. And I think it's so fascinating that tourism can even lead to more peace in the world. I mean, it's such a powerful industry to do good for the world. And but only if it's done in a sustainable way. That's very important, as it has so many, it can have so many negative impacts. But if it's organized in a sustainable way, it can lead to poverty alleviation and nature protection. And I'm very thankful that tourism has changed over the last 20 years. Because when I started my career, sustainable tourism had an alternative green wool socks, you know, goat wool socks image, geitenwolle sokken, Dutch people know. They were like talking to me, what are you going to do with your work? They were like, she's really crazy. And now it's becoming mainstream. And every day I learn about new initiatives and new organizations working on sustainable tourism and in CBT. There is momentum now. And my dream for my life, for my work life, is that no people are exploited by tourism anymore. And it's a very big dream. I'm so happy that I have, we have a long way to go. But I think with this momentum and my ever-growing, super enthusiastic, dedicated team, I know we can achieve this.
Yeah, so. Well, it has already a great start, right? I mean, yeah. Okay, what is your main takeaway after working for 20 years at Fair Tourism?
Yeah, so that was really explained already, I think. That's the main takeaway. I mean, tourism
is super powerful, right? And it can lead to a lot of beautiful things.
And also that we can collaborate with each other. You know, we are always open for our collaboration with other organizations to achieve our work, or, you know, to help each other and to assist each other. And I have the feeling that there is so much possibility in that way, and that people are interested in collaborating, and that we can achieve more together. So I think it's fantastic that more and more people are working in this field of community-based tourism, and
it's really appealing. I mean, I didn't know a lot about sustainable tourism before, and well, now I'm really interested.
Good.
Okay. Our last question will be a question from one of our Instagram followers, which is Sophia, who is Sophia, and she wants to know. She wants actually you to name some of the best countries for ethical tourism. Well, I guess we know one of them, at least.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. And I think ethical tourism, you can also really relate to CBT, community-based tourism. So I have the feeling that Thailand and South Africa are the pioneers, that they have so many CBT initiatives. Like, for example, if you ever go to South Africa, I really want you to visit my friends Danielle, Freddie and Lorraine in Goed Verwacht. It's a CBT project, 1.5 hour drive north from Cape Town. And check out in the future we'll post a tribal of like a post about them on Instagram and our other social media. Of course, our Karenni friends in Mae Hong Son, in Hoi Phuket and Hoi Sutao, that's Ai Muang, Peiyu, Mio Kin, Maja, Mave, and Madan, and so many more people, because that's what CBT brings, new friends, really. So I really want everybody to engage. If you're interested in meeting new people, and after the pandemic, please go there. And we are looking into online experiences as well to develop, but see how that goes. But maybe Myrthe, I don't know if you have additional destinations you think that ethical tourism or like CBT.
I think you most of them you mentioned them already. Like Thailand is a very good example, and in general, like Sub-Saharan Africa has a lot of community-based tourism projects as well. So if you're interested, really look into that. There'll be a lot of options there. Yeah.
Okay, well, great. Thank you very much for for joining us. It was a very interesting talk, and thank you. Thank you, Myrthe and Charlotte.
Thank you so much for inviting us. We're really, for us, very exciting to thank you so much.
For us as well. Okay. I'll stop the recording now.